What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue the conversation on mental diets. I got a bunch of stuff I kind of wrote down to kind of talk about, one of which is disengaging from these narratives, these media narratives, and how important that is for your overall mental well-being. It's like I notice the more I unplug from screen time, the better my life starts to just become. It's like not carrying all these, like, the weight of the world, all these narratives of like the they, and what are the they up to now, what are they trying to pull. It's like, fuck them. Who cares what they're up to? They're only dominating and enslaving themselves. It's once you stop giving them power, authority, putting them on like godlike status of like, oh, they're going to control the weather and spray nanoparticulates, and you'll be unable to resist the turning into a Borg. Taking these people off the pedestal that you have put them on is very important, because they are powerless. Serving satanic programs and agendas, is ultimately fruitless. And it's a losing proposition that only ends in self-destruction, mainly because we're all connected. And so viewing others through a lens of separation and ego, through carnal mind, through a satanic lens, is another way to maybe put it out there. Try not to put it out there in such a way that it causes triggering with language, because a lot of times when people hear of like satanic things or evil or demonic things, it's like immediately the mind goes to Hollywood and like the Exorcist shit. And this is like, once you actually see what evil kind of is, it's just operating in fear. It's the absence of love. It's viewing everything as separate. You're separate from everything. You're reacting, and it's like we have already been exposed to that kind of mentality in our old state of being, where we carried a lot of these scarcity beliefs, and there's really only ever two choices, no matter what's going on in your surroundings, in your life. It's only happening now, for one, and the choice is always between fear and love. Am I going to react, which is typically a fear-based thing to do? React. It's not creation. It's not creating. It's what new threat is out there? What new thing can I be hysterical about? What new, what way are they trying to kill me now? It's just like, so much of like the they, and this is coming from someone who's spent way more time than probably the average person down these rabbit holes, and like feeling like a victim, like, oh, the system is so fucking disgusting. I got to a point few years ago, where it was just like I just rejected even wanting to touch money because it felt gross, with the like the all-seeing eye on it, and just all of this stuff, and so much of it was just rejecting this whole beast system notion. And a lot of that has to do with like the beliefs and the assumptions about reality in general. Taking a lot of like maybe like big city problems, or like worldly problems, or like media narrative problems. Most of these are not real problems. They're constructed narratives. Naively, could be looked at to get attention and get money, as far as like the news. But if it almost seems a little bit more sinister in the amount of lies and deliberate skewing of reality. And I don't know if that's just something that happens through just the unconscious, not wanting to rock the boat, or, oh, I don't want to do this, versus like, some puppet master pulling strings. Ultimately the only will that's happening is God's will. And not to sit there and freak out about these things. It's easy to start to freak out about these things. Part of the reason I don't watch like conspiracy channels anymore, or truth channels, it's just because of the hysteria in either way, so it's like where some people will be like looking at people that are like terrified of COVID and like pointing their finger at them, like, how can you fall for this psyop and this and that. I had COVID. It's like, it was intense in the way that like after like 6 days, 7 days, it was still going. It's like, geez, this is intense. I hadn't had like a flu since like a child. I don't normally get sick. And on some level, I feel like I like manifested it on myself because I just wanted to get it over with and see what people, why were people freaking out like this, and everything else. And then through a bridge of incidents, it started to manifest at my wife's work, and next thing boom, here it is. But a lot of it felt like and this might be what a lot of people are experiencing with the hysteria of getting it, is these narratives. I didn't ever put very much attention on like what the media was saying about it, mostly because I don't believe the media tells the truth, and they haven't for 20 years. And so I don't believe that this time all of a sudden they're going to start telling the truth. It's like once you have like 20 years of lying to me, I don't care what happens. I'm not going to all of a sudden now trust you or Big Pharma or any of these places that have no reason to oh, by your existence, I should trust you, even though my entire life experience has shown why I shouldn't trust you, because you lie all the time. There's a bunch of lies and misinformation and deliberate narrative building, and a lot of times narrative building towards an agenda, towards a political ideology. And I don't know if if you look at that as almost being unconscious authoritarian groupthink, which if you biblically look at like Revelation and like the idea that through like this satanic unconscious fear-based kind of mentality, human nature tends to want to put a king in charge of them, putting some external expert over their life, so that they feel safe, and if you even look biblically at like like the Israelites, putting a king over, having God, a lot of this kind of repeats the same kind of pattern of consciousness. And not to say that obviously there's a reason for it, but like having this desire to want to build up a ruling class, this worldwide governmental kind of ambition to like dominate the world. Even like, what does that mean? What is the world? You want to dominate some like jungle people that are still in the rainforest, or do you just want to like control major cities, and feel like you're awesome? It's like a lot of that whole kind of mentality, and I experienced a lot of that as like someone who's like been through like the music business. I was like in the music publishing side of like the music business, but it was like the same kind of drives of like bigger placements, better placements, bigger exposure, and it was like the same kind of rat race where it's just like, oh, you get to the top of the pyramid and you stand up there like a goat and just and then you get clawed, thrown down for the next person to stand up there and bask. For what? And it's like even once you're at the top, then you're just terrified you get taken off the top. It's and the whole time you're not any more happy, not any more joyful. It's just one more shit show after the next. And so that whole kind of mentality, looking at that as like something that people just kind of do, but that doesn't mean that's what you need to start to do. And so as like things progress, especially when it comes to these like mandates and lockdowns and government things and all these stories and these fear tactics and trying to use coercion, and even with a lot of this horse shit, so much of it is still a choice. It's like it's not really more than idle threats. And that's the way a lot of the times the the evil, if you want to call it that, will like try to make it seem like there's no hope, and what am I going to do without my job that's like demanding I inject some experimental shit into my body. It's like it's hard for me to relate to that, as somebody who's like not really been in like the work force like that. It's like the last like job I had was like maybe like a decade ago, where it was like, oh, if I lost this job, I'm totally screwed, because I've just been on self-employment and like entrepreneurial, the music business and the handyman business, and then just side shit, and just totally different kind of path. But if I were to be employed somewhere and they said I had to do this, I'd go tell them to go fuck themselves. No. That's insane. It's like And if they even brought it up, I would start to wonder, why am I working here again? That I'm like working for people that are basically trying to medically rape me, and I'm supposed to be okay with that. Yeah, so that's something beyond crazy to me. That would even, like, you still want to work there when, like in my area at least, it's like there is a labor shortage. It's like you could probably walk into any business in like this area and be like, hey, I can pass a piss test. Yeah, I can start tomorrow. You want to hire me? And it's like, how much? I don't know, 15, $20 an hour. It's done. You start now. You want. We've been so short staffed for months. We'll get you going. There's like a factory that just like opened up. They're supposed to have like, what did they say, 100 something jobs. They only filled, what did they say, 60 or 70 of them. My buddy of mine, he just started working there. Basically he's got a business, but he's like trying to like flip some money, and so he just started working there just to get some money coming in. And he was telling me, he was like, yeah, you just like come in, fill out a thing, they'll give you a cup to piss in. You go in the next room, they don't even watch you or anything. Shut the door, they don't touch your clothes. Make sure you're like bringing in some pee or something like that from the outside. They don't care. It's like, yeah, as soon as it passes and you're good to go, start the next day. There you go. But like getting out of these kind of like victim narratives of like, a lot of that has to do with not trusting in the promises of God. And that's how like a lot of these things start to manifest. If you actually don't believe that God's your provider, and like, man, or if like you work for me, that was like, all of a sudden I'm your provider, it's like, it's not believing and trusting in like the promises of God. They start spinning you in like these fear directions, but once you like start standing in faith and just like starting putting it into practice more and more, trusting that God's going to push you where you need to be, that, if you're freaking out, about whatever's happening, so much of that, ask yourself, is this going on in my city? Is this going on in my community? Or is this going on through a screen? Most of the time it's going on through a screen, and that's where a lot of the psychological shit is happening, through screens, through the internet, especially through a lot of social media and stuff, where it's just like you get in these feedback loops where it's just like they're trying to keep your attention, and so they're projecting a paradigm of reality, a lot of ways that's just built on your like keeping your attention. And that can be keeping your attention through just irritating you or giving you fear things, giving you things that are outrageous, about the they, which, the they comes in many forms. It can be like, the truth community seeing like the they of like the synagogue of Satan or whatever. That's, these like the billionaire elite, that are trying to, create the one world order, one world government, all the currency, all that kind of shit. And like, but then that they could be the liberals, the Republicans. It just depends on where you live. What the they is. From my perception, of like being in a very red state, a very red county. Like the they is like, for most people in my community, it's like the liberals. It's like, not trusting like these government. It's like my state was like one of the last states to even adopt daylight savings time, because like people didn't want the government telling them what time it was. Crazy things like that. But like, looking at kind of what's going on and like identifying the they, it's like, okay, well, there's the they. It's like, oh, the unmasked versus the masked, the vax versus the unvaxxed. It's like, pick your they. I mean, it's part of like the relative world. It seems like it's like for every one of like the if you're poor, it's the rich. If it's it's the you're in business, it's the bankers. It's like there's so many of the theys. That can start to make it feel like you're just some victim of happenstance, some circumstance. But the more that you're able to kind of shift that mental diet from these things that are really amplifying the they, especially if you're almost borderline addicted to that kind of drama, which we can be addicted to these dramas. And a lot of like not wanting to let go of that drama is because part of that is like an identity issue that you've created for yourself, of like, it's easy to be like in like the conspiracy type crowd, then get into like, oh, I'm a truther, I'm a I'm a Cua, whatever. You know, it's like you're making these ideologies part of who you are, which is actually not who you are, and it makes it hard to let a lot of that shit go. When it comes to letting go of screens and living in your local area more, and really asking yourself, like, is this something you can physically do something about right here and now? Or is that not your problem? Is that God's problem? That you and just trust that God's going to sort that out in God's ways, and that's not something you need to be concerned about. You know, it's like you just see what's going on maybe in like I also see stuff like, oh, New York City is having all of these dramas and everything else. You know, I don't know what's going on in there. You know, for sure, I got some family that's in that area. You know, but like, you know, is it what the media is presenting it to be like, or is it just a shit show? You know, is there trash piling up in the streets because no one's working? Or they're like, oh, we got these vaccine passports, but like most things the government does, it's a complete clusterfuck. You know, it's like, most businesses are probably not even checking these things. You know, who's checking these? The employees. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that, and I wouldn't do that, but like, everybody's different, but like, looking at like that situation, it's like, okay, well, there's a whole bunch of chaos and drama in like that city, some California cities, but those are like a day drive away from where I live. It's like Chicago's like a couple hours away. It seems like Chicago's kind of dangerous. It's like when I was in Chicago, I was like, I worked at the airport and like in my area, and like we'd go out to Chicago for training. And I spent like a decent amount of time, doing like training and shit in Chicago, and like, that really just really put the nail in the coffin of like, I do not want to live around this many fucking people, and it was just like, just everything was more difficult, and it was just like, I kept missing the freaking, the hotel I was at was really close to the Blue Line train, and it was like I had to go a couple stops to go to this meeting, the conference area, and whatever, and I'd miss the freaking shuttle, and then I'd get on the train, and then it was just like, just all of this unnecessary just wasting of time, and just people were just nonstop wanting cigarettes and just begging for things. It's just like, what in the fuck is going on with this area? And like when I first started going there, it's like, really friendly about, oh, here you go. But by the time I was, if I lived in it, I'd become so jaded. I'm already somewhat jaded about things, but it's just like, I'd be very fucking cold, if I lived in a big city like that, or if just like not caring about the suffering of others, and it's probably why I don't live in a place like that. Even like the bigger city that's like north of here, there's like somewhat of a homeless issue going on, but nothing like is in Chicago. And like everybody that I worked with was always freaking out that I'd get shot, because I'd just go out into Chicago and just party and stuff. I had some friends that lived out there, and one of my friends, she lived out in like they call Boys Town, which is like a gay neighborhood in Chicago. I didn't realize that was like that, but I just like went to her like apartment and whatever. We just like drink and have fun, and like on the way back, there was like this bar, and it's like, what was the kind of beer? I can't remember. It wasn't Sam Adams. It was some thing, but it was like $2 or something like that. It's like, oh, that's a deal, but go in there and like all these dudes were really nice, and it's just like whatever. But I didn't realize it was like a gay neighborhood, and they were probably just like hitting on me, but I was just too drunk and naive to notice. But all of these things, you just gotta look, say, okay, is this happening physically in my area? Can I do something about it? And then if the answer is no, there's nothing to really do about it, then that's not your problem. That's not something you need to feed your subconscious mind. This drama that's going on in these other areas. It's like, yeah, you can pray for those areas that that God's will just be done on it. It's like you don't have to. I find that to be one of like a very helpful prayers, especially when you don't know what's going on. Just trust that God's will is already going on there. It's like you don't have to save it. You don't have to worry about it. That's not your problem. God's given you a life. God's put you where you need to be, and you're exactly where you need to be. part of this thing is just realizing that, but then, what is in your community to kind of steward, and that's the next thing, so it's like, if it's going on through a screen, way, what's going on in another country, it's like, I feel bad, I got friends in Australia, with this fucking craziness that's going on there. But that's for, as much as, like, it's like you want to support the people there, especially with this government that just, I don't know why these people are putting up with these assholes, and the insanity out there is beyond me. It's like much dangerous animals and shit that are in in Australia. He was like, they throw these guys in the outback that are just like hysterical. Throw them in the ocean with the great white sharks and just let them be, but probably shouldn't recommend that. But like, regardless, I mean, it's about compliance, so it's like, stop complying, and stop just listening to these liars, and then jumping through their hoops. It's just like, it becomes almost funny when you realize that they're just people. Like, Biden is just like a human being speaking out into the air, But then it's like your own drama, it's like whether you believe that he has power over you. I was listening to Algo's channel, actually, Algorithm. He was like, I forget who he had on, but they were talking about like, why certain groups like feel like they have this authority over other human beings, and like some of them like believe it's like God-given sovereign leadership, whatever. But it's like, I feel like it's like nobody has any type of thing over you. It's like, unless you give away your own thing to them to tell you what to do. It's like, you don't have to have people telling you what to do. That's crazy. Especially when God's inside of you, and God's probably telling you what to do on the inside. And part of the reason you kind of are like, oh, I just got to get out of here, is like, because like the Holy Spirit's been, hey, you don't got to keep putting up with this. Your life is so much more than what you think, but you've created this little prison for yourself. Because what starts to happen is all these fears, all these insecurities, all this drama from the inside, these inner conversations start to become your outer experience. And it's like, if you think small, you end up in like small situations, and small, and not even just that, but, it's just like, things start to spiral, and so look at everything going on in your life, in your community, through a lens of like, this is, a reflection of consciousness, and where you're at versus where you're desiring to be. The only thing that's keeping you from that is fear, and fear is an illusion. It's like, as you realize that there's nothing to be afraid of, God is real, and God is in control of literally everything, and that, who you are, is not fear. It's kind of hard to put into words at times, but it's like, take what you can in your local area, start networking, building community, locally, getting off of like screen shit, and like trying to build, and this is like some like doing YouTube and Bitchute and stuff. It's like, what's the goal of these? It's just for whoever God brings to this, to help them level up, ultimately to go further, even more, expansive. That's my goal. And it doesn't need to be a shitload of people. That's part of like the old identity, thinking like you physically need to do all of this stuff. So like to move a message, that a God-given message, I need to hit billions of people. It's like, it's all simultaneously happening, so it's like, as one person speaking these things into creation, God's been whispering it to thousands of people's, inner states of being. It's like, it's all happening at once. It's this only ever now. And so it's like, what's happening always is an up and down thing. It's not a left and right thing. It's a maybe raising your vibe thing, which is ultimately natural for you because you naturally are rising. It's the fear and the narratives and the stories and the mental diet that you can pack bricks on, that kind of just holds you at a certain level. But as you level up, not only do you level up in your consciousness first, but then physically, there's a shift in, the things you have to steward and the things you have to take responsibility and ownership for. And by the time that you've leveled up in your consciousness, you're prepared for it, so you're not freaking out with the added complexities. It's just so much of the time we think, oh, the extra complexities will make us happy. No, it's just more shit to move around and more shit to do. More, a lot of the times, it's like a lot of times people like maybe like, oh, I'm doing all these things, so that people talk, um, admiring the effort, I guess. I don't know, why, but it's like it's very rare that you ever hear people bring like it's like you'll be in a group and they'll all be talking about somebody who's like crushing it or something, but it's very rare that that group will then bring that to the same person that's crushing it and like, oh, we were all talking about how much you're just kicking ass and doing so awesome. It's like you never know what's going on. It's like, who knows? It's I feel like it's an illusion to think that it's like, oh, someday, it's just like, oh, all these people, maybe you can like kind of experience that, I guess. But like as a, but like having that as your goal, yeah, maybe, whatever. I don't care what people do. It's like what I'm doing, at least is, kind of focusing more locally, building community, and trying to, bring like heaven to my household, my family, my community. Hopefully that is like on some level a worthwhile thing for you to do too. As you be the change that you want to see. Everybody wants to see something different, but like, as you be it and bring it to your house, your town, your community, realize that everybody in the body of Christ is also doing that, and it's like, as you embody that change of states of like heaven on earth now, what can I do to help do that? What can I do? Probably nothing besides just be still and realize that God's already doing it. There's just so much of this thing. It's a mental kind of metaphysical balance first on the inside, being still, realizing that you don't have to do it, that God's already done it. That you just have to be still and watch. And so many times you get these narratives and stories from the old man, the old mind that come up, and maybe some resistance materializes that challenges that new belief or the assumption. But as you do that over and over again and you see that repeating pattern, then you start to become like, oh, wait, this is just part of this flow. It's the opposite again. Oh, I'm shaking in my little boots. I've only seen that happen 5,000 times. But like by the time you get to that point, then it's just like, then oh, it's the resistance. Fuck it, it's gone and over with. It's part of this old story. It's not going to shake the peace that you can just hold on to now. So it's constantly a battle to stay at rest and to keep your state of being and your state of mind in an ideal state, which your ideal state, is like states of love, which is different than the old mind that was in constant states of fear because it believed it was separate from everything. And so, as you start to realize that things are connected and how the inner connectivity starts having an effect on your life and things that you're stewarding, the more you can take yourself off this pedestal, stop taking things so seriously and start to enjoy the flow of things, start to enjoy the ride, start to enjoy the flow, not to be carried away with, oh, what's on the news today? Oh, Biden, who knows? It's if you don't watch it, just watch. This stuff doesn't affect you. The only reason it's affecting you is because you're putting your attention on it, and as you put your attention on it, it's growing. It's like, think about your attention as being like water. So you have these different things that are popping up all over creation. What you put your attention on, it starts to water it, and it starts to grow. So if you see something in the world, the quote-unquote world, that you don't like, move your attention away from it. It's like you don't have to sit there and destroy it because, at some point that was part of your consciousness, and by sitting there wanting to destroy it, you're kind of putting out some weird energy into creation, where it's just like, oh, well, God created it, ultimately, it's part of creation for a reason. I don't need to know what the reason is other than, I don't know what it even is. Stop thinking you know what it even is, and just like, it just doesn't resonate. And that's enough for me to move my attention to, oh, well, it's just some contrast to show me what I actually desire, which is actually just states of love, and it helps you kind of using that as like a relative to, oh, that's what I'm not, that's what I was, that was the old identity. The new identity, is like, then make the shift. Ultimately ask God what to do. Go within yourself. And the thing of it is like, you do it, and you might have some old story that pops up. It's like, don't just settle for it though. You always have the choice: choose fear, which is these old stories and narratives, or choose love. Which is, when you become more and more present and still, it's like, oh, you get these fear narratives. Oh, let that go. Oh, get some more. Let that go. And it's like, hey God, what is a better way to look at this? What does love say about this? Maybe get some more resistant thought. Maybe some more. But there's only so many narratives that you've built in your consciousness before you run out of stories. It's like, no, it's not that one either. I know what that is. Oh, I know what that is. And then just kind of rest, and boom, it just will come to you. A different way of looking at it, a different way to think about it, a different way, maybe in oneness and connectivity. You'll get an understanding, and it'll bring you some sort of healing and some peace, and so that's how you can start to navigate. Where it's like, oh, there's a healing thought that was different than what those other ones were. That's better. I'll put that one on. I'll believe that that's the direction to move going forward, or staying present. Because it is still now, regardless of whenever you watch this, you're watching it now, and you're only ever watching it now, so it's like getting out of that concept of these mental, oh, in the future, then I can be happy. Oh, if only in the future, X, Y, and Z play out, then I can be happy. It's like bringing that future state into a present reality and embodying that present thing now, because that's actually who you are now. God's already given it to you. The only reason you don't experience it is because you're like, no, I don't want to believe that. That's bullshit. And then there's all this fucking resistance that starts to want to come and tell you why that you can't be blessed now. It's like, oh no, well, there's so much suffering in the world, and so I got to suffer too. And it's whatever. It's these stories. And ultimately it's up to you to put it on and try it for yourself. Nobody's gonna do it for you. You got to do it, and try it. And then you'll see that it happens. It's crazy, but try it. But other than that, I think I'm gonna bounce. So thanks everybody for listening, and have a good rest of your. I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing. I appreciate you guys' spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. And until the next now, God bless.